Trauma, complex trauma. Oof. That's been a hard pill to swallow because I never considered myself, I don't want to say weak, a victim, even though I felt like my life was a lot harder than seemed like for some, right? We don't know what anybody's dealing with on the inside. But that's the topic today, complex trauma, and I'm going to try to keep this as focused as possible. The reason I say that is because there's a lot of aspects to my own story that I could go off on rabbit trails all over the place. So with that in mind, trying to keep a projected interest in complex trauma, right? Death by 1,000 cuts. That's what a lot of people term related to, especially narcissistic abuse as a child. So my story, if you're new here, Larissa at Prodigal Pieces. I've told my story before, and I've given some links where I've had life updates. And also, by the way, do sign up for my newsletter. It's free. It comes to your inbox as my posts go live. That's it. No spamming, nothing like that. And it's the best way to get in on the know and not miss anything. And join a part of the family because I do share some things in there that I don't always share in my blog posts. All right, so topic is complex trauma, and I wanted to give you some of my own life examples so that you can see how maybe I recognize this in myself. Okay, so if you remember my story, I'm about 6 months divorced now from what I believe to be an autistic man, undiagnosed, but late diagnosed. And I've mentioned before, statistics show like 75% of the time that when there's a late diagnosis, it's usually the wife who figures it out because they've lived with it. And about a year after that, I came to the understanding and belief that I was also raised by a covert Christian, narcissist parent. And everything since then has been falling into place. Is it a positive thing? Yes. Is it painful? Yes. Okay, so I've always noticed myself doing some things throughout my life, whether I have different symptoms of the complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm going to try to narrow it down to just some examples from my past and childhood in relation to my marriage because they overlap. Yes, one person's considered a narcissist, the other person is considered autistic, but if you've ever had any understanding of both of these neurodivergencies, if you will, they overlap. Some people who are autistic can be considered to be narcissistic, but they're not truly. And vice versa. So basically my thinking is that I sought what I knew in a person, and that would have been the treatment that I received. Whether one person knew it or not, a narcissist typically knows what they're doing. An autistic person doesn't understand the damage they're causing. Okay, so let me give you some examples in recent years and in the last couple of years that have caused me to become aware, right? I'm learning different things that make up my story and my physical story, where if you also go back in my past blog posts, there was a fear that I was having strokes, and I do believe that was my body reacting to complex trauma, CPTSD. But let's go to an example of I was purchasing a car, my current car, and was doing this on my own. I did take along my oldest son just to have a safety person there and just maybe see something that I might miss, but was purchasing this car on my own. And while talking to this couple, she is expecting. She has a little toddler, and she was expecting and was nervous because she lost the previous child to a subchorionic hematoma. All right, if you know my story, I have had subchorionic hematomas with 6 of my children. I had 8 total. 1 died stillborn as a complication of that subchorionic hematoma, which is a bleed between the lining of my uterus and the bag of water. And the second child lost was, I believe, related similar situation, but I also believe these bleeds were related to chronic trauma, complex trauma. So it didn't need to happen. Anyway, back to the story this lady is expecting. She starts to tell me the story of her having her hematoma and losing their baby, and I start to shake. It's not cold out. I'm not sharing my story necessarily with her. I did say I can relate and I understand and the pain, but I'm shaking, and it's to where my teeth are chattering and like I'm freezing. Okay. And I was like, what is going on? I just thought system overload, right? Well, right. But as I was going through the dissolution, the divorce, I would have different panic attack situations, but also when somebody I would meet learned about my history with a narcissist parent would begin to share their story, I would start to do the shaking again and almost reliving the trauma. And it's not like I was recounting my story, it was them telling me their story. And so I thought, what is this shaking about? Because I would be also on the phone talking to somebody and I barely can think it, right? My voice is quavering. I'm having a hard time. So that's just one symptom that I've noticed with myself in relation to a trauma symptom. And I also talked about in one of my recent blog posts about how my body also reacted to epinephrine, Novocaine type epinephrine that I was given to have a root canal done from clenching my teeth or grinding at night. That's also another symptom. I'm new to this whole muscle armoring or body armoring. That was just the recent to me because I have always felt like I'm living with one of these braces that people wear after an accident on their neck, right? And I'm very stiff. I have very limited mobility in my neck. I've been to the chiropractor. He's like, I don't know what to do with you. I'm carrying the tension. I always knew I'm carrying it in my neck and my shoulders. And I've known these things, but I didn't know why. And the more I researched, the more I realized this is me. There's some other factors that I'm not quite sure I relate to, as in the person who caused the trauma, that you'd have like a grand idea of them, or you actually would like to take them out kind of thing. I don't know that I've had visions of that, but I do have, especially through the divorce and understanding I was raised by a narcissist parent, process trauma at night. Obviously I mentioned the clenching of the teeth, but there's times where I just gasp and wake up and or I'm just like I feel like my brain just turns on. And it was really bad while going through figuring out the disillusion situation. And we lived together, by the way, separated for 2.5 years. You want to talk about stress? That was really, really hard. And not just on me, right? Everybody involved. But let's go back to childhood. So narcissist, covert narcissist, vulnerable narcissist is also how it's termed, is somebody who can just mentally kill you slowly. Messing with your head. You may not believe me that this, is it really that bad? What's the big deal? Okay. There's subtle things that were done that in one instance you would say that's not that bad, but you just add this to, this is supposed to be a person that is supposed to take care of you, to nurture you, to love you, trust them. Okay, I might jump back and forth as things come up, so bear with me. But for instance, my parents had built a 6,000 square foot home in the middle of a gorgeous property in the middle of a state park in the forest. So I got the benefit of that. Part of that, I felt always the need to make this parent happy, and would, for instance, in the summers, we would be at home by ourselves, and my one sibling, the golden child, the one who got a different treatment than I did, I would be more of the invisible child, the scapegoat, was told to babysit the rest of us. There was 4, and would get paid. Then when I was of age, it was my turn. I didn't get paid. Okay, no big deal. The same house, I would spend the entire day cleaning every room of this house. It had 6 bathrooms. Every inch, doing the laundry so that it like sparkled. And in one instance, when this parent came home, I got praise. And it was minor praise, but I got praise. So I clinged to that. And then I wanted to make this parent happy again, I would clean this house again and another time. This time comes home and disregards the cleaning. Oh, thanks. What did I do? Why did one time I get praise and this time I'm ignored? So do you see how it's just this weird thing? Or my bedroom was painted a color I didn't care for. Well, I have a sister. My sister's bedroom was painted in the color I liked, and my bedroom was painted in the color she liked. It goes on to a ton of things. My name was picked from a movie called Dr. Zhivago. I actually used to be kind of proud of it as a kid because I didn't know any better. I was named after the horrible actress in there and what she promoted. And so when I got to older and people would say, oh, where'd your name come from? And I'd be like, I don't want to tell you. It's just a name. And my sister was named the actress's real name in life. And I have two brothers. I'll just say the oldest and youngest is brothers. And even to the fact that there were just other signs. Okay, so you take that in from my childhood and just this mental not understanding why one time I'm praised and another time I'm disregarded, and just that I'm never enough. Like, my favorite dinner was never known, but this other sibling's dinner, it was made often, and this parent knew I hated it. But, we always made a deal that this was the so-and-so's favorite dinner. What's my favorite dinner? Don't know. Nobody cares. And I'm not throwing a pity party here, okay? This is what I just knew. So when it comes to then my marriage, and if you understand autism and all, there's kind of a lack of emotional reciprocity and understanding. Emotional intelligence level is typically very low. And that doesn't mean that they can't do certain things or have empathy. I don't agree with that because, remember, my children are on the spectrum as well. Not all, I'm not naming, but that I deal with that within my children, which adds another facet to this. So in my marriage, maybe I was disregarded. My birthday. It was, but yet I went over the top for everybody else. When it came to listening to my needs or my requests, they were disregarded. So do you see, there could be a pattern there that continued throughout my life that would just adding to this complex trauma, and just like a drip, right? Death by 1,000 cuts over and over. And it got to the point where my body was starting to fail. I'm having health issues. It's very common for somebody who's raised by a narcissist or in an autistic long-term relationship like this to have body failure, to have chronic illness, to have just a mess. So I'm on a path of healing. And what I wanted to kind of bring up as well, see, I'm tense. I'm sitting like this. This is why I have to always constantly relax my jaw, relax my neck, because I'm holding it. And I never want you to understand. I love my children, okay? There is also a problem that with them being on the spectrum to an extent, and ADHD and so on, there's different facets that is adding to my trauma. They don't mean to. I'm going to get emotional. They don't mean to. So I got the parental and family of origin mess, the mess of a marriage that failed. And now I'm dealing with trying to love my way through raising my kids that also don't understand themselves quite yet. I have, to their demise, I have my own issues, right? So they may not intentionally be doing something, but my body is receiving it a certain way. And I'm learning. I have noticed in regards to the shakes when talking about something, those are lessening. It's not instant when I'm talking about, like, normally I would be shaking here talking to you, and I'm not. And I'm learning how to recognize these toxic traits and triggers that are, holding up in me. And I'm also challenging myself because I know that isolating myself might seem like, hey, I'm not having any triggers, but yet I'm not out near the triggers. That's not healing. So in bits and pieces, I'm going to have days where I'm like, yeah, I'm rocking it. And days where I'm like, what happened? The floor just fell out. do you remember the police report I just had to file on my neighbor that came up in the yard and basically harassed me? That same day, my vertigo, right? I still have vertigo. So now I'm talking about it. My blood pressure goes up. I get a little more dizzy. But he knocked me and my vertigo went a little spiked. That evening, within the next hour or so, I had to go to my daughter's important track meet for their conference and watched my daughter race. And she struggled because we went from like 60 degrees to 85 and the whole team was just dropping like flies because it was so hot and humid. And she collapsed after her race, which sometimes happens, vomiting, but she couldn't run her other race. So then again, this isn't me doing this to myself. This is different environmental factors that I can't control, that I got to learn how to deal with. Okay. Then the next day I was watching my son play at his tennis, and it was raining, so we had to be inside. And if you understand how some of these indoor tennis courts work, there's a platform in between 3 courts here and 3 courts here, and you can watch either side. Up high is my vertigo, and then I'm on a bleacher. And at that time, my thumb's still fractured and it's healing, and I still have pain as I fell. I'm getting off the bleachers, and everybody's looking at me kind of creeping off, not just standing up and walking off. And I was like, I'm fine, I've got vertigo, and I laugh and I smile, right? That's my coping mechanism. So I've created over the years, I have no choice to create a ton of coping mechanisms, and I'm trying to learn, breathing techniques and different things that would help. And I think I've done well with the coping mechanisms. The fact that I can talk about it to you and deal with these things is just mind-blowing. So the other part that I don't like that I have is being hypervigilant. I've mentioned it before, but let's say this parent of mine would drop me off at the local pool and say, I'll pick you up at 5 o'clock. 6 o'clock comes, 6:30, 7, they're not there. And the next time comes, you assume maybe that they're going to be a little late again, so you aren't out there maybe at the exact time, and you get chewed out for not being on time. Or let's say you're forgotten, literally for 3 hours out in 90-degree heat by yourself at the softball diamond. Nobody there. You're just forgotten, right? I would excuse that as, oh, my parent's busy, or maybe I did something wrong. And then you tie that into marriage. My request, forgotten. I could swear I'd say all the time the epitaph would be for him was, I forgot. And so just not feeling that importance of people's lives and feeling like you're not worthy or you did something wrong, but attributing it to something, you just tuck it into different categories. And so I challenge you, if you're facing this or you know somebody who is, it's an injury, not an illness. It can be helped, it can improve, and you can be relieved. Now, I can't promise you're never going to ever have triggers that would set off anything. You look at me, I'm going to be dealing with this the rest of my life, but I do aim on healing and learning. And the more I learn, the more I want to share so that I can encourage you guys on your walk, or so that you can encourage the people around you. I had somebody ask me recently, you've got support, right? No. Yes, my kids, they are wonderful, but they're not the ones that should be carrying this burden for me. So as I look for support, and I do have people praying and listening, but not that person that's just running alongside and say, I got your back. But honestly, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to let somebody help in ways that I don't even understand. I don't know how to put that into words. Does that make sense? That I've had to be on my own and fend for myself for so long. I'm very lacking in trust in people, especially now after the divorce and understanding where I've come from. But, when I sit in a room, let's say you go into a restaurant and you have a choice when you walk in to where you're going to sit, I'm facing where everybody is. I need to be able to see what's going on. I have hypervigilance, worried about things. And that kind of goes hand in hand again with the autism, because sometimes there's safety issues and they don't maybe understand, and you have to watch and be careful. And it just kind of leads me on an edge to be on alert, whether I like it or not, whether it's an abuse symptom or not. I have to be aware and understanding. So if I'm prattling, I apologize. Again, I was taught to apologize all the time. I think I'm sorry could have been my epitaph, right? Okay, so what I want you to do for me is just take a minute to look at the suggested readings. I've got links to articles down below in podcasts, and I invite you to reflect. Oh, one more thing, ruminating. Doggone, if that isn't a big giant burr in my behind, I ruminate. What does that mean? Oh, I'm getting emotional. I basically cut myself over and over again. Let's take the neighbor instance, right? His words ring in my ear. Somebody will say something, or did I do that right? Should I have done this? What could I have done better? And it's like you're reliving it again. So you got to realize that points that you can stop it. So maybe the first time you notice it, it's here, and you say, oh, trigger is here, but my response was this far off. And eventually you work on it and you work on it, and you'll be able to catch it. Ruminating. All right, back to what I was saying. I'm not this scattered. I'm doing this in the seat of my pants. Feel free to ask questions. I know many of you reach out via email, because do know this is a public post. And so if you put anything in there, unless you tag on anonymous name with an anonymous email, somebody's going to know who you are. And if you're trying to avoid, like I have to go no contact with my family, somebody might figure this out. So do note that. And I'm going to be sharing some more things that I hope can help you, guide you, because I know I'm dealing, and it helps me to share with you. All right, until next time.